The tomb guard stood motionless as the old man approached, his cane tapping against Arlington's hallowed stone. The crowd parted, whiskers trailing in his wake. "He's too old for this," someone muttered. Another scoffed, clutching their phone. To them, he was just a frail figure, stubborn, out of place. But the tomb guard's eyes never wavered, locked on the faded metal pinned to the man's chest. What no one saw, what no one could know, was that the letter in the guard's pocket, yellowed, unopened, written in the blood-soaked sands of Normandy, held a secret that bound them both, and the truth, buried for 80 years, was about to step into the light. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The autumn morning wrapped Arlington National Cemetery in a soft veil of mist, the kind that hushes the world and draws the heart inward. Rows of white headstones stood like silent sentinels, their marble faces catching the faint glow of dawn. A gentle breeze carried the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves, whispering of seasons cast and promises kept. In the changing of the guardroom, a modest chamber beneath the amphitheater's stone arches, Corporal John Jack Reynolds stood before a polished mirror, his hands moving with the precision of ritual. His white gloves were flawless, his shoes gleamed like black mirrors, and the tomb guard badge on his chest shone like a star against the dark wool of his uniform. At 28, Jack carried the weight of his duty with a quiet resolve, his every gesture a testament to the sacred trust placed in him. Today, he would take his post at the tomb of the unknown soldier, where each step was a vow, each pause a prayer for those who gave everything. Jack's fingers traced the crisp lines of his uniform, ensuring every detail was perfect. His mother, Mary Reynolds, had always said a soldier's pride lived in the small things, the polish on a boot, the crease of a sleeve. A retired Army nurse who had served in the waning days of Vietnam, Mary carried the weight of those years in her eyes, though she spoke little of them. Her stories, when they came, were fragments of courage and loss, of young men she'd patched up in field hospitals, their faces etched in her memory. Jack thought of her as he opened a small package she'd sent from their hometown in Ohio. Inside was a letter, its paper yellowed and brittle, its edges softened by time. A note in Mary's steady handwriting read, "From your grandfather, from Normandy." Jack's breath caught, his fingers hovering over the envelope. His grandfather, Sergeant Thomas Reynolds, was a figure of legend in their family, a World War II veteran who'd fought at Omaha Beach, a man whose stories were woven into Jack's childhood, though he died when Jack was barely 5. The letter felt like a bridge to that distant figure, a voice from a past Jack had never fully grasped. He slipped it into his breast pocket, close to his heart, promising himself he'd read it after his watch. Its presence was a quiet weight, like a hand resting on his shoulder. Outside, the tomb plaza waited, its marble steps glistening in the early light. Jack stepped into the cool air, his boots clicking against the stone with a rhythm that echoed his heartbeat. The crowd was gathering, families with children clutching small flags, tourists snapping photos, and a cluster of elderly men in faded military jackets, their shoulders stooped but their gazes sharp with memory. Among them stood William "Bill" Carter, 92, a veteran of Normandy whose weathered hands clutched a worn Purple Heart medal. Bill had made this pilgrimage to Arlington every year since the war ended, a ritual to honor the brothers he'd lost. His eyes settled on Jack, the young tomb guard, and a flicker of something stirred, recognition perhaps, or the ghost of a memory he couldn't yet place. Jack took his position, his body aligning with the invisible lines of duty. The ritual began. 21 steps across the mat, a crisp turn, a pause of 21 seconds, then 21 steps back. The cadence was sacred, a heartbeat that connected the living to the lost. As he walked, the letter in his pocket seemed to hum, pulling his thoughts to a time long before his own. He imagined his grandfather, Thomas Reynolds, crouched in a muddy trench in Normandy, June 1944, the air thick with the acrid hang of gunpowder and the distant roar of artillery. Thomas had been a sergeant in the 29th Infantry Division, leading his squad through the chaos of Omaha Beach. Jack's mother had shared fragments of his story, how Thomas had carried a wounded man to safety under fire, how he'd rallied his men when fear threatened to break them, how he'd never spoken of the terror that must have gripped his heart. The letter, Jack thought, might hold a piece of that man, a glimpse of the soul behind the legend. The crowd watched in reverent silence, their murmurs stilled by the weight of the moment. Bill Carter stood at the plaza's edge, his cap pulled low, his eyes tracing Jack's measured steps. He remembered Normandy, the blood-soaked sand, the screams of the wounded, the friends who never left that beach. One face stood out in his memory. Thomas Reynolds, a steady presence in their unit, a man who'd shared his last cigarette and a quiet laugh before the landing boats hit the shore. Bill didn't know if this young guard could be connected to that Thomas, but the name on the program, Corporal John Reynolds, tugged at him like a half-remembered dream. Jack's mind wandered as he walked, the letter a constant presence against his chest. He imagined his grandfather writing under a flickering lamp, his hands smudged with dirt, his words meant for a family he might never see again. Jack had grown up in the shadow of Thomas's legacy, a quiet boy who preferred books to ball games, always feeling the weight of a name he wasn't sure he could carry. Joining the army had been his way of stepping into that legacy, of proving he belonged to it. Becoming a tomb guard was the pinnacle, an honor that demanded perfection, discipline, and an unyielding reverence for the fallen. But standing here, with the letter pressing against his heart, Jack wondered if he was truly living up to his grandfather's dreams. Had Thomas envisioned a world where his grandson would stand watch over the unknowns? Or had he hoped for something else, a world without war, without loss? The guard change came, a seamless dance of precision. Jack saluted his relief, his movement sharp, and stepped to the edge of the plaza. The crowd began to disperse, but the group of elderly veterans lingered, their faces a tapestry of pride and sorrow. Jack approached them, his uniform still immaculate, despite the morning's chill. He nodded respectfully, his voice steady but warm. "Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for being here today. Your presence honors those we guard." Bill Carter stepped forward, his cane tapping the stone, his eyes sharp despite the years. "Young man, that was fine work out there. You wear that uniform with pride. What's your name?" "Corporal John Reynolds, sir." Jack extended a gloved hand. "Most folks call me Jack." Bill's hand froze mid-shake, his grip tightening slightly. "Reynolds, you say? Any relation to a Thomas Reynolds, 29th Infantry, Normandy?" Jack's heart skipped a beat, his hand still clasped in Bill's. "That's my grandfather, sir. He fought at Omaha Beach. I never really knew him. He passed when I was young." Bill's eyes softened, a flicker of memory crossing his weathered face. "I knew a Thomas Reynolds. Good man, saved my hide more than once." He glanced at his companions, who nodded, their own memory stirring. "You got a minute, son? I'd like to hear more about your kin." Jack hesitated, the letter burning in his pocket. He hadn't planned to share it, not yet, but something in Bill's voice, a quiet urgency, a bridge to the past, pulled at him. "I've got something you might want to see. My mother sent me a letter from him, written during the war. I haven't read it yet, but maybe we could look at it together." Bill's face lit up, a rare smile breaking through the lines of age. "I'd like that, Jack. Let's find a quiet spot." They walked to a nearby bench, the mist still clinging to the grass, the air heavy with scent of earth and memory. Jack's hands trembled slightly as he pulled the letter from his pocket. The paper was fragile, its edges softened by time, the ink faded but legible. He unfolded it carefully, his voice low as he began to read. June 5th, 1944, somewhere in England. My dearest Ellen, I'm writing this before we ship out tomorrow. Don't know if I'll get to send it, but I need you to know what's in my heart. The boys here are scared, but we're ready. We're fighting for a world where our kids, your kids, can grow up without this shadow of war. I'm proud to wear this uniform, proud to stand with my brothers. If I don't make it back, tell our family I fought for peace for them. Tell them to keep that dream alive. All my love, Thomas." Jack's voice broke on the last line, his throat tight with emotion. Bill sat silent, his eyes glistening, his hands folded over his cane. The other veterans leaned closer, their faces a map of shared grief and pride. One of them, Frank, a wiry man with a voice roughened by age, spoke up. "That sounds like Tom, always talking about the future, even when the odds were against us." Bill nodded his hand, resting on his cane. "Your grandfather was a rock, Jack. On that beach, when the bullets were flying, he kept us moving, got me out of a bad spot when I took shrapnel in the leg. He didn't make it through the war, did he?" Jack shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "He made it home, but the wounds caught up with him. Died in '53. My mom was just a kid." Bill reached out, his hand steady despite his years. He clapped Jack's shoulder, his grip firm. "You're carrying his torch, son, right here at this tomb. Every step you take is for him, for all of us who came back, and for those who didn't." Jack swallowed hard, the letter still in his hands. "I've always wanted to make him proud, but I didn't know him. This letter, it's like hearing his voice for the first time." Frank leaned forward, his eyes distant but warm. "We all carried letters like that, Jack. Some got sent, some didn't, but they were our way of holding on to hope. Your grandfather's words, they're still alive in you." The group fell silent, the weight of memory settling over them like the mist around them. Jack looked at the letter, then at the tomb, its marble glowing in the morning light. "I'd like to take you to his grave if you're up for it. I think he'd want you to see it." Bill nodded, his voice firm despite the tremble in his hands. "Lead the way, Corporal." They walked through Arlington's quiet paths, the headstones standing as silent witnesses to countless lives given. The mist parted as they moved, the sun breaking through to cast long shadows across the grass. Jack led them to a simple marker: Sergeant Thomas Reynolds, 229th Infantry Division, 1918–1953. He knelt, placing a single penny on the headstone, a soldier's tribute, a gesture Bill and the others recognized instantly. Bill removed his cap, his hand trembling as he saluted. Frank and the others followed, their salutes shaky but resolute, a final honor to a brother they lost decades ago. "Rest easy, Tom," Bill said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Your boy's doing you proud." Jack stood, his eyes fixed on the headstone. For the first time, he felt a connection to his grandfather, not just as a legend, but as a man who'd hoped and fought and loved. "Thank you, sir, for remembering him, for telling me who he was." Bill smiled, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You keep walking that post, Jack. Every step's a promise kept." The group lingered for a moment, the silence heavy with shared memory. Frank spoke up, his voice softer now. "You know, Jack, we used to sit around the fire at night, talking about home. Tom would talk about his Ellen, how he wanted her to have a good life. He'd be proud to know his grandson's here, guarding the unknowns." Jack nodded, his throat tight. "I hope so, sir. I'm starting to understand what he fought for." As they walked back to the plaza, the mist began to lift, revealing the full expanse of Arlington's rolling hills. The tomb stood in the distance, its marble a beacon of permanence in a changing world. Jack felt the letter in his pocket, its weight no longer a burden, but a guide, a piece of his grandfather that would walk with him through every watch. That evening, Jack called his mother. The phone rang twice before Mary's voice came through, warm but tinged with the weariness of her years. "Jack, how was your day, son?" Jack took a deep breath, the letter in his hand, its words now etched in his mind. "Mom, I read Grandpa's letter today, met some men who knew him, veterans from Normandy. They said he was a hero, saved lives on that beach." Mary's voice softened, a catch in her throat. "Oh, Jack, he was. I sent you that letter because I knew it was time. You're out there guarding the unknowns, carrying his heart. I'm so proud of you." Jack closed his eyes, the weight of her words settling over him like a warm blanket. "I felt him today, Mom, like he was right there with me. Those men, they told me stories about him, things I never knew." "He's always with you, Jack," Mary said, her voice steady despite the emotion. "You keep walking that post, Jack. Every step's a promise kept." The call ended, and Jack returned to the tomb that night. The plaza was empty, the stars bright above, their light piercing the darkness. He stood before the marble, its inscription stark in the moonlight. "Here rests in honor, glory, an American soldier known but to God." Jack's hand rested on the letter now, a permanent fixture in his pocket, its words a part of his very being. He didn't need to read it again. It was written in his heart. As he took his post, the familiar rhythm returned. 21 steps, a pause, a turn, 21 seconds of stillness. But tonight, each step carried a new weight, a deeper purpose. He wasn't just guarding the unknowns, he was guarding his grandfather's dream, a dream of peace that had survived the blood and chaos of Normandy and found its way to this hallowed ground. The letter gave Jack a piece of Thomas, a voice, a hope, a legacy that would guide him through every watch. The wind whispered through Arlington, carrying the echoes of countless lives, stories woven into the fabric of the cemetery. Jack walked on, his boots steady, his heart full. The letter from the past had become a light for the present, a reminder that some promises endure beyond time, beyond war, and even beyond death. At the tomb of the unknown soldier, where every step is measured and every salute is sacred, Jack Reynolds carried forward a legacy that would never fade. And so, to those who pause at Arlington, who watch the guard's steady pace through the mist, listen closely. You might hear the pulse of a nation, the heartbeat of men like Thomas Reynolds, whose words and dreams live on in the steps of those who stand watch. Pause today and remember them, not just in silence, but in the courage to carry their light forward through the years, through the heart of a soldier who never forgets. This is the story of a tomb guard and a letter, of a misty morning at Arlington, of a promise and a legacy that bound the past to the present. It's a reminder that at the tomb of the unknown soldier, where every step and every salute is sacred, the greatest tribute to the fallen is to carry their dreams forward with unwavering heart. So pause today. Think of Jack, of Thomas, of countless soldiers whose names rest in silence. Share their story, not just to honor them, but to remind us all that duty is forged in the quiet moments of remembrance. And if you find yourself at Arlington, stand before the tomb, watch the guard's measured pace, and listen. You might just feel the pulse of a nation, unbroken, echoing through the mist.